Howdy, partner. Now, you ain't by chance seen anybody called Clint Eastwood, do you? Well, I'm here at the behest to send him back to the future. If only Clint Eastwood could see himself in this movie, well, he would look a bit like Michael J. Fox. Howdy, partners. Welcome to my review of Back to the Future, Part 3, the third and final movie of this trilogy. I'm back to normal voice. Hello, everyone, and welcome to my review of Back to the Future Part 3, the third and final movie of the Back to the Future trilogy. Directed once again by Robert Zemeckis, starring Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd, and this movie was released only a year, actually probably even 6 months, after the second film, because they were shot back to back. So this movie was released in 1990, and yeah, let's get on with it. So, the plot of Back to the Future Part 3 is as follows. Stranded in 1955, Marty McFly learns about the death of Doc Brown in 1885 and must travel back in time to save him. With no fuel readily available for the DeLorean, the two must figure how to escape the Old West before Emmett is murdered. And adding to that, this is also the film in the trilogy where Emmett falls in love. Aww. We have reached the end of the trilogy with Back to the Future. And of course, because this is a Western, I decided to pop on my old hat. As for Back to the Future Part 3, you know, it's a common conception among most trilogies and most franchises that they usually start to deteriorate by the third movie. Actually, I think Back to the Future has been a very consistent series of films, and the third movie is no exception. I won't call this movie perfect. I have a couple of issues with it. But on the whole, Back to the Future Part 3, this is a really good, really creative, very ambitious final film in this trilogy. You can tell that Robert Zemeckis wanted to go all out to make this the biggest one yet. And it certainly has that. It certainly does feel like the biggest and the most grandest one yet. I mean, the finale of this movie is enthralling. The third act with the train chase is amazing when Marty and Doc are trying to go back and Clara is chasing after them. The fact that this movie is set predominantly in the Wild West is actually really cool, and there might be a little bit of a jarring jump at first after the first two, but I actually don't mind it, and I think it works rather well, and it's actually kind of cool to see an old kind of Western town really not well recreated. I don't know exactly where they filmed it, but it looks as though the sets have been very well crafted to fit that time period. And I love the costumes for this movie. The costumes are great, when especially Marty, who has to dress up like a cowboy, and there's this constant joke about him calling himself Clint Eastwood throughout the whole film, which is kind of funny. And so it's nice that they paid homage to Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood is a very famous filmmaker and actor, as we know, and obviously the Man with No Name trilogy is where he donned it as a cowboy. As well as this being a fun Western romp, well, Western / sci-fi romp, what I also love about Back to the Future Part 3 is the romance. I actually think the romance is very well done. Emmett falls in love. This is really Christopher Lloyd's best performance in the trilogy because he gets a lot to do, and he falls in love with Clara Clayton. And it's kind of interesting. The two of them share a love for Jules Verne, and actually they name their kids Jules and Verne. Like all relationships, it is a bit turbulent. They do have a bit of friction here and there, and you know, there is a chance that it might not work out, but in the end it does work out. And it's really lovely to see Doc fall in love. We haven't really seen this sort of sentimental side to him yet. We've only seen the kind of mad scientist side to him in the first two movies. So this is a great movie to give him more character development. Mary Steenburgen, who plays Clara, I actually really like Clara. I think she's a really sweet character. And I like the fact that she's kind of similar in terms of her interests to Doc. And they have a really sweet romance. Like the scene when they talk about Jules Verne, which then leads to their first kiss. As well as the barn dance. I love that scene so much when they're just having a great time. They're not necessarily dancing in the best formation, but you know, Doc is just happy. It's just, it really is nice to see him so happy. As well, we have the return of Thomas F. Wilson, who plays, Buford, Mad Dog Tannen. They call him Mad Dog, but he doesn't like the nickname. And once again, we have a another repeat of the Biff and Marty rivalry, which we saw in the first two movies, and it's definitely present here. This leads me on to my sort of main criticism of this movie. I feel like the first act of this movie was actually a bit of a letdown, because I felt that the movie was trying too hard to repeat the previous movies again, and I wasn't sure where it was going to go. Like the scene when he first arrives in the Wild West, and then he gets knocked unconscious, and then he wakes up next to, well, it's not his mother, but it's the person who he recognizes as his mother. He's like, "Mom, what?" And we see this scene 2 times before. We saw it in the first movie, and we saw it in the second, so we didn't need to see it in the third. As well, like the bar scene. Okay, look, the bar scene with Buford is kind of cool, but then once again, it's the same scene all over again, just in the Wild West, you know, and then they have that massive chase sequence. Although, admittedly, the chase in this one is actually a lot cooler than the hoverboard chase, in my opinion. I think that the chase in this film, when Marty they grab him by the rope and they're dragging him across the dirt, that is quite entertaining. But I look at it and I go, well, this is fun, but it's the same thing. And I was really worried the movie was just going to keep doing the same things, just in the Wild West. And then we get to the meat of the story when Clara is introduced, and then the movie just goes up about 10 gears. So for me, it's just the first act that is a bit so-so. I wasn't really sure where it was going. Like, call it the first 20 to maybe the first half an hour of the movie was a bit turbulent for me. Then Marty has to face Buford in a confrontation, and the movie kind of builds up to there. So Marty really has to sort of step up and decide if he really can, you know, use a gun, and if he can actually kill the guy. And he's not sure he wants to do that, and I kind of like that angle from Marty. Like, he's not a killer, you know, he doesn't want to get caught in all these situations. Marty's not been a stranger to violence. I mean, he's been aggressive before, and he's punched Biff countless times, and you know, so he's never afraid to get down and dirty. But to use a gun and to actually kill someone, I like the fact that they kind of played on that, and the fact that Marty was reluctant to do that, and all he wanted to do was just go. Like him and Doc, they just wanted to get out and go. At first, Marty is kind of not wanting Doc and Clara to be together because it would interfere with what they're trying to do, but in the end, I think he knows that Doc is very happy. And there's that quite hilarious scene when Doc is drunk. He takes one shot and he passes out. And he has 10 minutes before he has to face Buford. And then the barman makes this, like, toxic, really hot drink. That scene was hilarious when Doc runs out of the bar and, you know, throws himself in the water. That was pretty funny. Once again, the music by Alan Silvestri is amazing, and that Back to the Future theme never gets old. It really never does. And Thomas F. Wilson, who plays Buford, I mean, well, it's Biff, but just the Wild West version of Biff, and he does a pretty good accent. I quite like the sort of southern accent he does, and the fact that his face looks all dirty and he's got the beard, and I think he constantly calls Marty, like, "You yellow belly," or something like that anyway. But once again, Biff meets the same outcome as he does in the other movies. What's this whole obsession with the manure? Like, he gets chucked into manure all the time. It's like, come on, you don't have to keep repeating the other movies. But aside those minor repetitions, the second and third acts of this movie are really great, and the movie really actually is the most emotionally satisfying of the three, because of the romance and because of the outcome. I must say, the third act, like I said, is enthralling with the final train chase, and then when Marty returns and the DeLorean is actually destroyed by a train track in 1985, and Doc had always said he wanted to destroy it because it was causing so much trouble. And the ending is more or less happy, and it's bittersweet, and thankfully Marty and Doc do manage to say goodbye, and I do like that goodbye scene. I thought that was really, really well done, and they obviously go off with their separate partners. You know, Marty has Jennifer and Doc has Clara. And it's a really nice way to end the trilogy, because it's been about these two characters and their journeys and their adventures together. And it's just a wonderful, sweet way to end the series. Although I have to say, that train, the DeLorean train, I don't know if that's what you call it, but the massive train time machine at the end is... That's pretty spectacular. And throughout this movie, there are a lot of, you know, gunfights and horse chases, and, you know, the Wild West theme is pretty amazing, to say the least. And there are some good comedy as well, like the people in the Wild West are kind of funny, like some of the smaller cameo roles, especially when they talk to Marty, and they're all kind of putting wagers on him to kill Buford. And Marty actually proves he can shoot well by shooting the targets at the fair, but he doesn't know if he could do that to Buford. And I mean, overall, Back to the Future Part 3, this is a really great movie, and it's a great way to end this trilogy of movies, and I really like the Wild West influences, and obviously the references to Clint Eastwood are appreciated. The first act is a bit ropey for me. I didn't know where it was going to go or if it was going to work, but if I can ignore the repetitions to the other movies, what we get in the meat of the story is really good. And I'm satisfied. I'm very satisfied. I really enjoyed this movie, and I think I actually enjoyed it a bit more than the second one as well, which is something. It's not as good as the first one, but that's fine. But Back to the Future is one of those trilogies that is very consistent. They're not perfect. Well, certainly the sequels aren't perfect, but I have to say, I've enjoyed watching them immensely, because they are all very entertaining, and they all actually they hold up really well as a consistent 3-part story. So, in the end, I'm going to score Back to the Future Part 3 a 9 out of 10. So that's it. Back to the Future is done and dusted. What a great trilogy. It's a really great trilogy. You have to watch it. If you haven't seen it, then definitely give it a watch. You don't necessarily need the sequels. The first one can be enjoyed on its own, but I actually kind of like the trilogy. I think it works well as a 3-part story, and I would happily revisit them. You know, they're very fun and exciting movies. So yeah, definitely check them out. To this day, Back to the Future 3 remains the last one, but, well, never say never to a 4th movie, but I don't think Robert Zemeckis is willing to make another one. I think he feels that it is complete as a trilogy, and I actually agree. I don't think we need another one. It's perfectly wrapped up, because, you know, I wouldn't feel like it was worth doing a 4th if we couldn't have Doc and Marty in it, so there we go. Anyway, thank you very much all for watching this review. What did you think of this film? Please comment down below, let me know, and stay tuned next time for more reviews, and please hit the subscribe button for that content, which is coming your way. So until then, I'm Mr. Thomas 11. See you, partner. Goodbye.